what is the idea of a team in Agile? Right? So the idea of a team in Agile is 6 to 8 people with everything and everyone necessary to build the product that they're responsible for building, okay? And what we're really saying, right, we're gonna start to build on some of the language that we've been using, right? What we're really saying is that this is an encapsulated delivery unit. Encapsulated is just like a kind of a fancy word for saying that it has really few or no dependencies. And so why is that super important, right? Because the idea is, and we're going to go deeper into this, right, is that those teams are going to be operating off of a well-formed backlog. They're going to be pulling part of that backlog into sprint planning. They're going to decompose the work, understand it, meet with the product owner, get clear on the acceptance criteria. Maybe they're tasking things out. Maybe they're breaking things up smaller. Maybe they're story point estimating, right? All the things that you might do during sprint planning. And the idea is that that group of people needs to be able to make a commitment, per se. Right? And one of my pet peeves, and this happened a long time ago, so I should probably get over it, is that the idea of a sprint commitment. When I grew up in Agile, there was an idea of, you make a commitment to deliver the sprint. If you bite off more than you can chew, you can always scale back the next sprint. The team gets to decide how many points they pull in. We want to operate at a sustainable pace, but I tend to look at what they pull in as a commitment, right? It should be. Even if it's not, right? Even if you object to that language, one of the things I think we can agree on is that the team needs to be able to produce a stable velocity. Over time, we have to be able to get to the place where we can make and meet commitments, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing, and this is why teams are so important. Because if we're going to get to a definition of done, right? We're going to build a product, right? Kind of thing out here, right? Right. If we're gonna build a product on a predictable schedule, right? I have to be able to pull off something off this backlog, have the team be able to make a reasonable commitment against it, and it has to be able to meet the acceptance criteria, right? We have to be able to get to a definition of done. If I don't have an encapsulated team, then what happens is that I, in effect, have dependencies. I have things that have to be coordinated. What I see in practice is that most teams are largely at capacity, right? They're doing break-fix work. They're working on their own set of features, right? There's all kinds of stuff going on. You could theoretically put Slack into the system, but anyway, so there's just a lot of challenges with teams reaching out to other teams for help in a very dynamic way. And so in the small, this idea of an encapsulated delivery unit with few or no dependencies that is able to produce stable velocity, right? That is like the key, It's just to me, it's really it's so foundational that it's like without it, I don't see anything in Agile that actually works as designed. I think it's like a fairly foundational presupposition to literally everything else that we build on. But it's mentioned in like a sentence in the Scrum Guide, right? I mean, a lot of the books, they'll talk about it, but what I think happens in practice is we go back into our organizations and those kinds of teaming strategies aren't really in play. And so we just go, okay, well, we can't get that kind of a team, so we're just going to do the stuff that this book says to do in the absence of that team. And when we don't get the results that we want, we blame the methodology or the leadership or the commitment to it or whatever. There's a lot of different ways we can do it. In a small organization, right, it makes a ton of sense to organize around products, right? That's kind of obvious, right? If a team of 6 to 8 people can build a product, then awesome, right? If the organization or the product is too big and a single team can't do it, maybe it's around like feature sets, right? Where it gets a little bit complicated, and this is where governance and some of the dependency stuff starts to really come in, is when you start to group teams around layers like front end, back end. Right? You're going to inevitably have, there's strategies for not having dependencies in those scenarios, but more often than not, an early stage transformation, you're going to have those. A lot of times, like what we'll start to think about initially are things like business capabilities, right? Organizing teams around business capabilities, right? Another way of organizing teams that we talk about is like value streams, right? That kind of stuff. Having a strategy for how you're going to form those teams is absolutely key.